So this is homework 3, problem 13, and we're asked to construct a confidence interval with and without the outlier included for this set of data here, which we're dealing with some prices, it looks like. Could be home prices or something like that, but it's so much easier to do that in StatCrunch than to crunch all these numbers. So to get into StatCrunch, first we're going to use this little blue box, and we're going to open in StatCrunch. Now once you have your data open in StatCrunch, the way that you're going to go ahead and do a confidence interval, and again we're doing a confidence interval, it looks like for the mean, right? Yes. Okay, so we're doing for the mean of the data. We'll press stat, tstats, one sample with the data. Okay, so whenever we're doing a confidence interval for a mean, especially if your sample size is less than 30, we're going to use our t distribution rather than our z distribution. So click with data, select your column, and then we want to go ahead and create a confidence interval. Now just pay attention to what confidence interval they want. So in the problem that I have, I'm constructing a 99% confidence interval. So here is my 99% confidence interval. And click compute. Okay, so here we have our lower limit and our upper limit. So what you'll do is you'll go back over to your values here. I'm just going to write these down so I can bring them over and I don't lose them. And we're going to type those in. Okay, so I have those written down. And I'm going to go over here, and they want us to round to the nearest integer, so I'm just going to disregard those decimal places. I had a 0.5 in the first one, so I'm going to round up to the 10 there. So if you look, I'm just going to show you here. So I have 0.5, so I'm going to round this up to 30, and I have 0.4, so I'm going to keep this one at 20. So let's go back over here. So I have 15, so 156, 230 because of the rounding, and then 307, 620. And let's see if I got that correct. Yay! Okay. So the next is to get rid of the outlier. Now we need to know what an outlier is. An outlier is either a really large value for the data or a really small value for the data. Now one way to really know if you have an outlier is to think about how many standard deviations from the mean you are. So if a data point is more than 2 standard deviations from the mean, it's probably an outlier. Okay, so the way that you can kind of make sure that you have the correct outlier is you can go to Stat, Summary Stats, Columns. And I'm going to select my column, and I'm going to do my mean, and then I'm also going to press my little star button on my Mac to also get the standard deviation so I can see the mean, and I can calculate 2 standard deviations above the mean and 2 standard deviations below the mean. So I'm going to click Compute. So my mean price here, it looks like is 231,925. So I'm just going to write that down, 231,925. And my standard deviation is 84,428, we'll call it. So 84,428. Now that means if I take my mean and I add this twice, so 231,925, you know what, I'll just bring up my calculator so you can see what I'm doing. So if I take my price, which was 231,925, that was my mean, and I add 2 standard deviations above the mean, so I'm going to do 2 times 84,428. That means anything that's above the 400,781 would be considered an outlier. I can also do below, so I'm just going to write that down so I have that. I can also say anything below 2 standard deviations below the mean would also be an outlier. So I'll do the 231,925, and I'm going to subtract 2 standard deviations below the mean, and that'll be 84,428. So anything below 63,069, just going to write that down, will be an outlier. So going back to my data set, we're looking for anything below 63,000, which I don't have, and anything above 400,781, which I do have. So we're going to take out this value. So I am going to say, see you later. Okay? So we're going to take that one out, and I'm going to run my confidence interval again. So I'm going to do Options, Edit, Compute. Let's hope it changes that, and it should, and it does. So let's see here if we got this correct. So 166,674, and then next to it is a 6, so I'm going to round that to a 5. So 166,675 is the bottom, and then the top is 255,725. So 255,725. And as you can see, it changes your confidence interval a bit because it'll change that mean. That mean is much lower than before. Notice before it was 231 because now that huge value is gone. It was really pulling the mean up from what it really should probably be. So let's see here. Let's make sure we got this right. So 166,675 and then 255,725. And let's check my answer. And I got it, okay? So much easier to do in StatCrunch. That way you can kind of identify what your outlier is pretty easily. And if you have any more questions, just let me know.